So yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Just really appreciate it. Acknowledge that this is a super uncertain, challenging time for everyone. Every day is a new one. So we're excited to try to adapt the way that we connect with y'all, but make sure that we still get to do it. So hopefully this works. So yeah, just before we start, we're going to hear a lot of different updates today from people, hoping to preserve a lot of the things we plan to share in person. So you'll hear from different community members about some of the resilience work happening, but also just want to own that, myself included, like feel my body carrying a fair amount of stress and anxiety and uncertainty. I can notice it in my shoulders are tight. I feel my heart beating faster sometimes. And I think it's important in moments like this to remember that we have the tools to like reset and stay grounded and stay present. So wanted to start us off with an activity from a book called My Grandmother's Hands. So for those of you who don't know, it's a book about historical and racialized trauma. And Resma, who writes it, talks a lot about learning about how the trauma of our ancestors and also the resilience of our ancestors lives in our body. And you can kind of learn to feel that and then also do exercises to process that in a healthy way. And so I'm just gonna actually read literally an exercise right out of the book that I really like and would invite you, if you want, to follow along as we're doing it. You don't have to do anything special. It's all, you can do it right where you're sitting. And as you're listening, just notice what you feel in your body. Do you feel any tension releasing, anything like that? So just to start, gonna invite you to sit comfortably in a chair. And if you want, close your eyes and just start by taking a few deep breaths. And as you're breathing, imagine that you're floating in space. Below you, planet Earth turns slowly. Watch it turn for a few seconds. Slowly descend until the part of the country you're in fills your field of vision. Stay directly above it, like a GPS satellite, so that it doesn't move beneath you. Keep descending until you're looking down on whatever city, town, mountain, valley, or other area your body is sitting in right now. Continue your descent until you're looking down at the top of the building you're in. If you're seated outdoors, descend far enough so that you can see your own body below, as if you're viewing it from a helicopter. Keep dropping, slowly and steadily, until you can see your body in detail, as if you're about 10 feet above it. Observe your body's posture, any movements it's making, the clothing it's wearing. Slowly and smoothly, descend the rest of the way and slip inside your body. For a few breaths, simply be aware of being in your body. Relax and let the chair that you're sitting in support you. Notice the sensation of the chair against your legs and thighs. Notice how it feels against your back. Now, slowly, you can open your eyes again and orient yourself by looking around you, including behind you, and return to the here and now. And so, yeah, just wanted to start with an exercise like that so that we can kind of all come back into the room, come back into our body and be really present, or as much as possible for the next hour and a half. But if there's other times where you feel yourself needing a tiny reset, I mean, that took like a minute and a half. So just would encourage you to continue to notice that kind of thing throughout the day and practice it over the coming weeks. So yeah, with that, we're going to jump in. Thanks for doing that with us, our first virtual reset exercise. So this meeting was originally going to be held at Edgecombe Community College. So wanted to offer a thank you to them because they have generously been a host and supporter of this work for almost 3 years now, and really appreciate them offering that again. And then to give you a sense of what the next hour and a half or so will hold, gonna do as best we can a short little introduction connection activity. Even though we're virtual, we can still connect. Share a little bit about historical resilience, some of this group's strategy and work to date, a little bit of focus on Reconnect for Resilience training, and some really neat new things that have happened in the last several months there. Share about a really cool project that a group of students at UNC have been working on with regards to law enforcement. And then for those of you on the call who have done a 2-day Reconnect for Resilience training before, we will have an optional virtual practice group at the end of this meeting for you to stay on with some of the certified trainers on the call and potentially practice some skills. So packed agenda, should be really fun. So as I said, wanted to start with a connection activity. Typically in-person meetings, we do this with folks at their tables, and it's just a quick exercise for you to connect with others in the room and cue that you're safe to your nervous system so that you're in a place to then learn and engage and be vulnerable. So it doesn't have to be in person. We can do it just as well over this. So for this activity, this is a tool that comes directly from Reconnect for Resilience. And it's about something called a resource. And so to define, a resource is a specific and personal thing that it can be like a memory of a moment with a person or place or activity that makes you feel very calm or happy. It can be something you're good at or proud of. It can be a specific time when you felt good or calm or strong, or sometimes just okay, because okay can be what gets us through. Or a physical or personal attribute that is strength. So like an example could be like a resource is a family vacation you went on one time, like for me with my mom, where I remember just like feeling really vulnerable with her. So it's something like that, something kind of specific enough that you can recall and feel at ease and connected when you think about it. So what we're gonna ask you all to do is to think about that for yourself, and then in the chat window, type in just kind of who you are and what your resource is. And as you're sharing and as you're reading other people's, I would just notice any feelings that you have in your body. So let us go ahead and do that. Great, so some of them are starting to come into the chat. So as y'all are typing, feel free to read some of the other ones and just notice what that feels like. This is awesome. I see a lot of people sharing about outdoors, being with family, things in nature like hearing or sounds, music, pets. Yeah, just really appreciate everyone sharing. And just want to note that I think some of the stuff can actually be things that you can tap into or access even when we're in a period of social distancing or kind of this heightened awareness of a virus. And even in the times when you can't, often just thinking about some of this stuff can help you to feel more connected or get through a tough time. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing, and just appreciate everyone kind of being present and sensing into this stuff. If anything comes to mind, feel free to continue to add throughout the meeting. We're just going to go through the agenda, but the chat's always open. So kind of this next topic, I drew this green line on here and I don't know how to get rid of it, but we'll be all right. So one of the things that we really wanted to talk about, and this came out of a little bit earlier in the year, there was a convening of several communities across the state that are doing collaborative problem solving. And a few folks from this collaborative represented us there. And one of the things that came up was this idea about talking about racial equity and historical trauma and how we need to not leave that out of the conversation. And something else that was said, though, was that if you're going to talk about historical trauma, we also need to acknowledge our historical resilience. And so we wanted, especially, I think, now as we go into times where we feel as though we need to be strong and persist through something hard, wanted to spend a little time reflecting on this. And so the basic idea is that we believe that our community and its people are defined by their assets, and that our community doesn't necessarily have deficits. A lot of the disparities and challenges we see are a result of unjust systems that have sort of perpetuated inequities for a long time, but the people themselves are strong and have persisted despite that stuff. And when we think about our history, we're here because of the strength and resilience of our ancestors through a lot of difficult times. And we actually carry that in our bodies. And sometimes we lose track of that or forget that, but that resilience lives inside each of us and is a result of all the things that the people that came before us pushed through. And so just to give an example and maybe put things in perspective, the Montgomery bus boycott lasted 381 days. That is a super long time. That's more than a year. And so when you think about all the times during that bus boycott when really bad stuff happened, people were arrested, people were beaten, people were treated in ways that are extremely racist. There were a bunch of times when folks participating in this must have felt like, when is this ever going to end? Is it even worth it? Are we doing the right thing? Like, why are we doing this? But when we look back and imagine, like, what if everyone had quit on day 380 or day 360? How different stuff would be. And a lot of the reason that was successful was because people had this innate resilience and were continuing to tap into it. And the reality is that there's so many more stories like this that live in all of our histories. And reminding ourselves of that might help kind of contextualize how we get through a really hard time. And so I kind of find it helpful right now to be reminded of that when I think about, what does the next several weeks look like? What do the next several months look like? And, maybe it's 381 days, but they could do it. We can too. So kind of for this, just wanted to do a short reflection and invite you to think about a story or person from your people's or community's history that showed resilience through a hard time. It can be very personal. It doesn't have to be like a well-known thing like the Montgomery bus boycott. And if you're comfortable, we'd invite you to share this in the chat. You don't have to. And as we're monitoring the chat, we might ask people, a couple of people, one or two, to share with the group on video. So if you're willing to do that, please just write that in the chat, and then we'll try to moderate. And everyone won't get called on, but we might choose one or two. And as you're sharing and reading, same thing, just notice the sensations in your body. And just to kind of cue it up or give you an example, I'll just share that for me, like as I think about this, I think about my mom. And my mom immigrated from India when she was like 28, which is younger than me. And she was the first person in my entire extended family to ever come to America. And she was actually married and came before my dad. And she came here for 6 months and then found my dad a job and brought my dad over. And I just like think about that story and the resilience she had, and just being reminded of it makes me feel like, man, if she could do that, then I must be able to get through some of this stuff. So that's just an example. Give you a couple of minutes to share, and then we might call on a couple of folks to share whole group.
Hello, this is Naeem. Hello, this is Naeem. Can't hear anything.
Hey, Naeem.
Hello?
Hey, I think a lot of people have their phones on mute, so that's why you can't hear them, but you're on the call.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just
Hey everybody, this is Seth. Just transitioning, but seeing a lot of stories coming in, kind of some themes. Feel free to put on there if you'd like to share or be spotlighted. Can kind of call on you virtually through Zoom. But some of the themes, seeing people talk about kind of wide range from direct experiences they had personally to interactions with partners or close friends and family to work situations or your work community or broader community. Seeing people mention different family stories and kind of the hardships that different people went through in the 1900s and with the Great Depression, and what people were able to overcome. And so, yeah, just important for us to like hold on to, especially moments like this, the amount of positive resilience that we're already wired for, and that already exists within us and within our people and our cultures. All right, so Ron Green, we're coming to you. We're going to spotlight you. If you want to unmute.
All right, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Seth, can you?
Hey, Ron, I can hear you.
Okay, good. All right. So I put in there because I grew up I was born in Chicago.
All right, Ron, we're not hearing you.
Some of them said they can hear me. Hold on a second.
Yeah, I can hear him.
I can hear you, Ron.
I can hear you, Ron.
I can hear you.
Sorry, man. Everybody can hear me except for Seth, man.
I can hear you.
All right, I'm gonna go
Okay.
ahead.
It's just me, Ron. People can hear you, so you keep going.
All right, so I was born on the south side of Chicago. So those of you who are familiar with South Side, the population on the south side is not as diverse as you would think in some areas. So majority of the people in our community were African American, and then we moved back to my mom's and dad's hometown in Mississippi when I was young. And of course, there was a little different dynamic. And growing up in Mississippi, of course, racism, is very prevalent. I mean, not only in the country, but it was really heightened in Mississippi. Well, walking one day, one of my friends, his dad was a doctor, so they lived in a really nice neighborhood. So, our family sometimes we always used to go over there to eat because they always had food. And we would walk over to their neighborhood and we would eat. And one day we were walking back, me and one of my cousins and my younger brother. I was about 11 years old, and this car of white guys just pulled up on us and called us the N-word and saying, "What are y'all doing over here?" And one of them spit all over me, just spit on me, and had a mouthful of tobacco. And of course, we got down, I got down and wiped it off, and they were just calling us all these names, and they were older guys in this car. And so we took off when we ran, and they chased us in the car. Well, they didn't catch us or anything. But after that incident, I had this real hate for white guys. And every time I saw one, I mean, he could say anything out the way and it was going to be a fight. Until it got to the point where one of my good friends in school was a white guy. And I had to really overcome that hatred as a result of this incident that happened, to understand that, you know, all people are not the same. And regardless of the color of your skin, I remember Malcolm X once said, he was like, he was talking about being a Baptist or a Methodist or a Democrat or a Republican. He said, it doesn't matter. He said, it's the person that he said he was talking about people and being evil and hatred, and said it's the person. So I had to really think about that, and playing baseball is, you know, I was always a lot of times the only black person on the team. So I had to learn to get along with people, and it's come full circle. And here I am now working, developing young people over the last 20 years, all young people, regardless of their color, regardless of, you know, their gender or whatever it may be. And, you know, I have learned to have a deep love for people altogether. But that experience, you know, really messed me up for a while. I mean, I didn't trust. And I mean, anybody, even when I was in college, they could say anything. If half of the N word came out, it was going to be a fight. And it was just because at that time, that traumatic experience really stuck with me. But I had to really work over the years to really learn that all people, you know, regardless of who they are, the color of their skin, you know, they have to be responsible for their own actions. And we cannot just put a label on someone, you know. And I come from a family, my dad actually marched with Medgar Evers in Mississippi. So we have a strong background in fighting for not only the rights of African Americans, but for the rights of all people. So I really changed over the years, and you know, and some of my you know, favorite people in this world don't look like me. So, you know, in order to work with people on a daily basis, we have to look over our biases, regardless of the things that have happened to us in our life, and understand that people are people regardless of that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that story, whole group.
Yeah.
It sounds like in addition to yourself, just like your family and people around you have a long legacy of fighting and being really resilient. And yeah, just that's like, really appreciate you sharing. I feel energy from that, and appreciate you sharing. Yeah, so just wanted to really ground in that today, and really excited to have some guests to share with you about the work that's been happening in the community around these different resilience skills and these different resilience tools. Just going to very briefly take us through, I know some people on the call have been coming to these meetings for the last 2 or 3 years, and other people, this might be your first interaction. So this is a really short background of kind of how we got to today. And Rural Opportunity Institute, or ROI, we're really focused on supporting people's healing and reshaping practices, and doing that in a way that can help build a healthier, safer, self-determined future for current and future generations in Edgecombe County and in Eastern North Carolina. And kind of the two values we really want to make sure to lift up is it's really important to practice listening, and to listen to people who are most impacted or have the lived experience. The people with lived experience are the people with expertise, and we need to do a better job listening, and that can really help us do better with equity and inclusion. And then big core value is just, we know that people are not to blame for their trauma or stress that impacts them, and that trauma is caused by unjust systems. And resilience, I mean, the science is so hopeful. Resilience is an inner strength in all humans, and we literally as human beings wired for healing and connection. And that's some of the stuff that we just keep coming back to as the work continues to grow. So back in the summer of 2017, did a series of interviews. Community leaders in Tarboro defined parents of children who themselves are more isolated or who might have some mental health challenges as the user they wanted to better understand. And so we interviewed parents, we interviewed principals, teachers, police officers, anyone who was kind of in that provider world or who was a parent themselves. And what came out of those interviews was stories of adverse childhood experiences or stories of trauma. And that really focused us on the work on resiliency and on trauma. Came together on some insights, shared those back out with the community. And because trauma is such a sticky, complex, always evolving challenge, there's not a clear or simple or easy solution in many cases. So we did a process called systems mapping. And at the simplest level, it is just storytelling and understanding relationships. And as human beings, we can only hold one relationship in our head at a time. We can't actually hold two relationships at the same time. We're constantly going back and forth. So systems mapping is a process where you can get all the stories of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, start to map those stories, and then see how they all fit together. And once we kind of get these shared stories out of our heads and onto paper, we can start to make a strategy and start to understand the forces that are causing the realities we currently see. And the big idea of systems mapping is just we're not focused on blaming anyone individually, and we're trying to identify where's the shared opportunity. And so people got together in Edgecombe for, a good 6-month period. Over 300 people participated in building the systems map. People got together and did different activities to surface these stories. Here's kind of an example. You can see literally the things people said in these workshops became the core stories and the core loops of the map. And so this is kind of the core map that is rooted on, core loop that the map's rooted on, but we have, you can kind of point your finger anywhere and trace it. So if you start with the unaddressed trauma force and see that plus sign, when that force is increasing, we have less safe environments, less stable relationships. When we have less safe environments and less stable relationships, we have higher unmet physical, emotional, social needs. And when we have higher unmet needs, we have lower capacity to kind of respond to the challenges we see. And that lower capacity can lead to higher unaddressed trauma. So that's kind of the core story that people identified across all these different workshops and meetings. And all the other stories kind of build off that core one. And then in March, a final map was kind of finished with a lot of input from a lot of different people. And kind of the three main areas of the map were, when people have stress in their bodies, our bodies turn to a negative coping behavior, whether that's aggression, violence, substance use. But we often meet that response to stress with punishment. And we segregate and isolate people who are stressed. And so this could look like putting kids in alternative learning programs, or kids getting removed from school or removed from jobs. And so that was kind of the first main story that the community identified. Second main story was just this idea in systems of care, we often get like the wrong fit of treatment. So people identified stories where like they go into the emergency room. The top two reasons in our community people go to the ER is chest pain and digestional issue. And they'll run every physical test and often can't find a physical cause. And it's related to unaddressed stress or anxiety. And so this was kind of a dominant story that came out of just trying to get a better fit of treatment. And the last story that really came out was this idea that when we individually or collectively have lower hope, we can often lead to kind of glorifying the few limited success stories and then turning that into blame. So when someone is struggling, whether it's a kid or an adult, we might point at them and say, hey, so-and-so was able to be successful, why aren't you? And we kind of turn their struggle into a situation of blaming someone. And when we blame people, we get into this place where it's a lot easier to isolate them and a lot easier to cut them off from resources. So those are just some of the map is a collection of hundreds of stories, but those are kind of the three dominant ones that come out. And the kind of big idea is that our current system moves away from healing trauma because it segregates and isolates people away from the chance to connect and to heal. Our bodies heal through being in safe relationships with others. And then kind of building on the Grandmother's Hands book by Resma, the current system is optimized to uphold historical trauma and produce future generations who hold the energy of trauma in their bodies. So at an individual level, we're just trying to build tools and skills that help us better kind of manage the energy and get more into a place of balance and calm. And kind of last piece here of just work to date, people in our community came together and did a leverage workshop. This was people from a whole bunch of different systems, DSS, schools, law enforcement, as well as people with lived experience. They really dug into the map and kind of picked these three areas where they said were high leverage. So they identified bright spots, areas where the map's frozen, and said these are the three areas we should be focused on. And those three areas have kind of been summarized into the strategy that we're all collectively working on. And that's a 3-part learn, part 1, heal, part 2, and connect, part 3. And so it's really about learning what is trauma, how can we respond to it, And if we do that, we're going to start to shift away from punishment and move into healing. Can we create new practices that help us be less punitive and build more skills? And then if we do those first two parts of the strategy, how can we help kids who have been removed from school get back into school, or adults that are not in stable employment get back into employment? So it's a big, audacious vision that the community in Edgecombe has built. And kind of the shell that holds it all together is this idea of a peer support model. People shared stories of when they went through hard things, they'd get referred to the doctor or the pastor or the lawyer or someone with a more status or privilege. And they really wanted to get support from someone who had been through what they had been through. So long-term in our community, people want to see that people who have experienced trauma and healed are put in a position of leadership and support where they're providing healing to others. So this is kind of the strategy that as a community we're working on, and kind of informs what you'll see the rest of this meeting today. We'll share this information out over email so you can use it yourself to kind of share and spread the strategy in your own sphere of influence. And just have been doing a lot of work to date around this. So you'll see some of the numbers coming up. But yeah, have done over 100 presentations that have reached over 4,000 people. You'll learn about a curriculum that over 400 people have gone through. And so kind of trying to make this a little more interactive here. Based on that 3-part strategy, we want to do our first poll of the day, and just ask you, which part of the strategy does your work most align to? Does it align to that learning part, the part of healing where we're trying to shift practices and be more healing, less punitive, or is it around connecting people who've experienced trauma to stay connected to school and work? So it should pop up on your screen. Feel free to share which part of the strategy your work most aligns to. We'll take 15 more seconds and get your first poll vote in. Great. So looks like about half the people on the call said their work most aligns to the learning part of the strategy, learning what is trauma, how can we respond differently. And then just over 30% most aligned to the healing part. And then about 20% aligned to the connect part. Really neat that we're kind of distributed across these 3 parts of the strategy. And the community said these kind of go in order. So it's also cool that we're kind of working in order. Most people are working on the first part, and then we're working our way through the strategy. And then building on that, similar question, but just which part of the strategy are you most excited to see change in of those 3 parts? And that poll should be coming up momentarily. Let's go ahead and take a few seconds to share which part of the strategy you're most excited to see change in. Go ahead and take a few more seconds. Wow. And so really clear here. Over 80% of people on the call said they're most excited to see change in the healing part of the strategy. How can we shift away from being punitive and isolating and towards more healing or restorative or skill building approaches? So a lot of energy and demand in our community to see this shift away from isolation. And it's a really normal human reaction to kind of out of self-protection say, I need to be punitive and I need to get space between me and you. And yeah, just a lot of opportunity for us to build on. There's a lot of hopeful evidence and science out there of there are simple things we can do to be more responsive, be more restorative. So that's really exciting. Yeah, so this next part you're going to hear from the real stars of the show, and that's our trainers and people who have been doing the trainings. So under this learn part of the strategy, there's a community accountability board. Huge shout out to Felicia, Yolanda, Matt, Byron, Yolanda, and Debbie. These 5 residents on the left meet monthly and set decisions and vision on where trainings, when do they happen, who should we be recruiting, and then the work that ROI does is accountable to these people. And big thanks to Debbie Futrell for being the fiscal agent and being a non-voting member. Just really important to try to balance power dynamics and intentionally say that funders don't drive decisions and that a board of residents in our community get to decide about these trainings and what happens. We've had 7 meetings to date, and this board has overseen over 10 2-day Reconnect for Resilience trainings that have hit, I think that's an old number, I think we're up over 400 people now. The Reconnect for Resilience training teaches 7 skills, and you can kind of see the attendance by different sectors. One of the coolest things is that these trainings bring together people from across all these different sectors, and in the feedback, people say they really like that. And then just feedback has been very positive. We will be figuring out what to do now with the virus and how to be able to offer different kinds of support, but for the foreseeable future, we will no longer be doing any in-person training or anything like that. And then, yeah, after you do these 2-day trainings, there's kind of 3 paths. You just use those skills on yourself. You share those skills within your circle of influence with your people. And the last path is to become an official trainer. And so our board actually oversaw a process. 39 people applied to be trainers, and 18 people went through a 4-day train the trainer in November based on what the criteria that the board set. Here's some of the people pictured who actually got to be a part of the first train the trainer. And then they had 6 months to complete a mastery-based skills checklist to show mastery on these different resilience skills. So these are the people you see on your screen are really the like experts in our community on resiliency, on how our bodies work. So hit them up, contact them, use their expertise. Just an amazing group of people. Feel free to throw shout outs in the chat if you know any of these trainers up on the screen. And kind of last note here is this group who's become certified trainers will now have the opportunity to do these awareness building presentations throughout the community. So we often get asked to do 90-minute presentations about trauma and resilience. To date, there's been over 4,000 people who have got these trainings, and the people who are certified trainers will now be able to start to respond to some of this demand. And a positive note, any of these presentations can be done virtually if you want that for your staff or for any of your community groups. Yeah, this time really excited. Mr. Naeem Akbar, if he's on the line, he's one of our certified trainers, and he was going to walk us through one of the 7 skills that we actually learn in the training.
Yes, can you hear me?
Can hear you great. And thanks so much for joining, Naeem. If you want to just introduce yourself and then take it away.
Okay. My name is Naeem Akbar, and I'm a reentry specialist. I work with men and women coming out of prison. Plus, I work with the youth. I do a lot of things in the community. And with the major population that I work for, I found that there's a lot of trauma in that population. No, not just the men and women that are coming out of prison, but trauma in their families, especially the time that they were in prison, and they come out and believe sometimes that they're going to resume the position that they had in the family. But a lot of times, everything changes. So they're full of trauma. I work with them as a peer mentor, and peer mentor because I've been incarcerated. So I'm able to have some credibility with that population. And when I train for resources for resilience, I had to question myself after getting training. I had to question myself as to, well, why with so-called qualifications that I have, college degrees and everything, that I repeatedly went back and forth to prison. I found out that, well, I had unresolved trauma issues that I needed to, look at and resolve. So after learning the tools, some of the tools for resource for resilience, I was able to apply these tools to myself, and in doing that, and I was able to better serve the population that I dealt with. And one of the tools that I find very helpful is the rapid reset, and that's a tool that when a person feels overwhelmed, you might need to use the rapid reset strategies to balance his nervous system. And there's a few ways that you can do this. In dealing with people that are sort of like, in a rage or feeling bad about themselves, when you work with people, you notice certain things about them. You notice where they are, whether they are depressed, whether they're hyped up. And so we use structures to sort of reset their nervous system. And that just means getting them back in balance, getting their nervous systems back in balance. So one of the practices that we use sometimes is called WeMap, because you have to first let them know what you see in them. And you do that by asking the person what is going on and what is challenging or bothering them right at that moment. And when they explain, then you ask them what especially troubles them about the situation that they're in, what troubles them the most, and what really matters about what is troubling them. They might say something. Like, "Well, I just got out of prison, and my wife needs this, my children need that, and I'm not able to get it because nobody will give me a job." So, understanding that, then I will watch the person and I describe what I see in them. Because I'll say something like, "As you're telling me about this, you look or you sound mad, you sound frustrated, you sound confused." So I mirror what I'm seeing in that person. And then we ask the person when hard things like this come at them, and it sometimes affects their emotions strongly. It's normal that their bodies will respond in ways that might make them feel discomfort or out of balance, and make them feel not like themselves. So we ask the person whether he feels amped up or does he feel shut down? Shut down. And in a lot of cases, they'll feel they're amped up. They're amped up. So, and we always ask, we always ask what they're noticing in their body, because when they have these different episodes, it affects the body. It affects their bottom. You ask them where they feel, how they feel in their bodies. We listen very intently to the person. Listen intently, and we're interested in ask them, actually, are they interested in learning a skill that we've learned that would help them get back into their resilient zone? And their resilient zone is just bringing their nervous system back into balance. And one of the, and with the WeMap situation, which I just explained, it's used best with another one of the tools that we use. And rapid reset is good to bring a person back into their resilient zone, because the rapid reset, you notice how they respond after you've gone through an exercise or confrontation with them. So you might suggest something as simple as taking a sip of water. You ask them to take a sip of water, because you want their attention refocused to being amped up, to trying to bring that nervous system back into balance. So if they agree to take a sip of water, sometimes they might say they want to walk. They want to walk. Sometimes they might just want to cross their arms and pat each side of their arms. Well, they're going to have some kind of physical. They're going to have some kind of physical reaction from these exercises. Well, in the case of drinking water, you ask them to pay attention to the sensation of the water and how it feels on the inside. You're slowly bringing them down. You ask them, how does it feel? How does it feel in your mouth as you are swallowing? And as it goes down your throat, how does it feel going down your throat? And then, how does it feel when it goes to your stomach? What kind of sensations do you feel? And after walking them through this drinking of water, then you ask them to notice how their body respond after they've gone through this particular exercise. And the exercise, it signals safety to a part of their brain. And the part of that brain is called the amygdala. And the amygdala is the smoke alarm, sort of like serves as a smoke alarm, a smoke detector. Also, it makes you aware. It makes you aware that there's danger about. Sometimes those thoughts that we have when we are amped up, they signify danger. So,
Awesome. Naeem, you're
yeah.
getting some really positive comments on. I know you're on your phone, so you might not see the chat, but people are highlighting the chat saying thank you for your powerful testimony. We are lucky to have Mr. Akbar in our community. He is a true asset. So getting a lot of positive feedback from the chat on the Zoom.
Okay.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, kind of going into detail about how the brain science works and how using these tools helps us get back in our zone. Really,
Yes.
really appreciate you. And feel free to
Okay.
leave on comments to give me shout outs. Thank you so much, Naeem.
Okay, you're so welcome.
Great work. So yeah, this next part, just really excited. The trainings that have been happening in our community to date are mostly with adults, like people in the providing or helping profession, nurses, school, social workers. And in early March, just a couple weeks ago, had one of the first ever youth trainings in Edgecombe County. It's one of the times it's happened in the state. They did one in Raleigh last year, but this is still on the early side. And it was youth from every middle school and high school in Edgecombe County came together and did a resilience training. And Victor Jones and Yolanda Thorne, our certified trainers, led that training. So just wanted to give people a chance to hear about that. And a big thank you and shout out to the Edgecombe County School District for their work to secure a DPI school safety grant that made this training possible and other resilience work. And so, yeah, you can kind of see some pictures here of some of the youth and the mind mapping activities they did. Big shout out to Victor for developing the mind map as like a tool for learning and integrating knowledge. And Gabby, if you're with us on the call, one of the incredible students, Gabrielle, is going to share with us just what that was like to be part of the training and what her favorite tool is and her future goals for resilience work going forward.
Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Alrighty, so my first time doing the resiliency training was in January, beginning of January, and in March, a couple of weeks ago, that was my second time. And with me already having done the resiliency training, I still was learning like new things. And my experience from doing it was really great. I loved having kids that were my age and just learning how to deal with trauma and stress and knowing that you can be resilient through it, that you can still live your day-to-day lives with everything that's going on. So I really enjoyed it a lot.
And Gabby, what's your favorite tool, or what tools have you found yourself using after the training's been over?
My favorite tool would have to be learning my resources that I have. So I think it was my best friend Janice. I use her as like a resource when trying to come down from being amped up. I share what's going on with her, and she's like my happy place. So I use her as one of my resources. That's one of my favorite ones to use, my favorite tools to use.
Awesome. And then maybe in closing, what do you hope to see in the future with these resilience trainings?
I definitely hope to see more youth involvement in it. I think we are like the next generation to come about, and if we can teach these to other kids in our community, we will only thrive and get better from it as a society. So definitely more youth involvement.
Awesome. Yeah, really appreciate you sharing, and hope we can see you in a Train the Trainer soon.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Feel free to give shout outs in the chat to Gabby. Thank you so much, Gabby. And then if Aaron Swanson is on the call with the Edgecombe County School District, no pressure, but feel free to share maybe from a district perspective about the resilience work.
Yes. Hey, everybody. This is Erin, and my colleague Sylvia McGahey is also on the call, and she was able to be there for the majority of the 2 days, so she's going to jump in. But I'll just say that Edgecombe County Public Schools is really supportive of this work. All of our principals jumped on this opportunity to send their students to this training, and we're just really excited about giving their kids this opportunity and then following up with the students to kind of hear what they learned, and then hopefully have their students share some of this information with others too. So yes, we 100% support it. If there are other district folks from other places on the call who want to talk with somebody about kind of how we rolled this out as a district, we'd be really glad to do that. So you can always be in touch with me. I'll put my email address in the chat. Sylvia, do you want to hop on for a sec? Sylvia, you may be muted if you're on. Okay, well, Sylvia may have had to hop off, so I'll just say again, we got really great feedback from the kids, and really hope to host another youth training in Edgecombe, hopefully this coming fall. So thanks again.
Cool. Thank you so much, Erin, and big thank you to the district, just all the behind the scenes work to figure out transportation and busing, and it was quite a logistical feat to pull off a training during the school day for youth from every middle school and high school. So big thanks for all the work you do behind the scenes to make that happen. Yeah, and then really grateful to Reese Robinson of New Freedom Hill in Princeville, a video production company, and she referred Jeb Bennett, who is from Weldon. They actually came and did a youth testimonial video of the RFR training. So the link is here, and we're going to share it out over email. So it'll be a thing that you can see, and please share it and post it and spread it around. But really neat to kind of capture the reactions to the first ever youth training in Edgecombe County. And then at this point, we're going to shift into the last kind of content for the meeting.
Great. Yeah, so kind of last thing that we wanted to share for this, this is a neat project. It's been emergent kind of over the last school year. So we have had the privilege for the last 2 years of working with UNC Chapel Hill on their Public Health Behavior Department has a capstone program where a team of master's students work with community organizations for an entire year on different public health related challenges. It can be like impact measurement, creating stuff. The team last year worked with us a lot on biofeedback in the sheriff's office in the county jail and kind of designing that pilot. And then building on that, there's been a lot of energy around how do we continue to engage with law enforcement. And so this year's team has been doing some really neat stuff with that. And so rather than me tell you about it, we have actually a couple of our students are on the call, but one of them is going to share with you just a little bit of what they worked on, and then we'll demo a part of that product to you. So Juliet, if you're on, invite you to.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep.
Oh, cool. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Juliet. I'm one of the members of the Capstone student team at UNC. It's been really great working with Seth and Vici and their organization ROI with trying to increase awareness and addressing trauma and stress in the community. So one of the things that we were tasked with was to try and raise awareness and knowledge in specific populations in Edgecombe County, and we chose law enforcement officers because, I mean, they work the front lines of a lot of the things that are happening in the community, so they're often exposed to a lot of stress and trauma. And so in order for us to reach this population, we learned that law enforcement officers have a lot of time in their cars to listen to things, and that would be the most useful way to reach their population. And so we created a podcast that we wanted to create as much space as we could for community members to share their experiences, and this is the way that we did this. And so we were able to talk to Seth and Vici and interview them about ROI and how they've been helping the community. And we interviewed 3 different police officers from Edgecombe County and got a lot of really great insight from them and how they individually address their own stress and trauma and how they use rapid reset strategies to deal with it. So this was a really great project and we're really excited about it. So yeah, our podcast is up on Spotify now, and I think Vici said she was going to play a clip of it, but we are really thankful to all of the officers that were able to participate in this, and we just are really glad we were able to give a space for community voices to be heard, and yeah, we think this is really important work.
Awesome. Yeah, just super appreciate all the work that you guys have done. And I'll just be honest, like, I don't think that podcast idea ever would have crossed our minds. So just like, it's been super exciting. So what's cool is this, again, I know nothing about podcasts, but this team has launched said podcast, and we'll share this out, but there's like links so you can listen to it on Spotify or listen to it on this platform called Anchor, and I think it's eventually going to get on Apple. So just wanted to give you the chance to hear a short clip. There's several episodes of it, so like, as you can see, there's a bunch of episodes with different people sharing their stories and kind of how they use the resilience tools, but wanted to just give you a feel for what it is. So we are going to try this. Okay. So I'm just going to play like a minute-ish clip of Lieutenant Muse's episode.
So earlier, you mentioned your struggles with PTSD. Was there a specific tipping point that caused you to seek out mental health resources?
For me, I don't have necessarily one incident that triggered my PTSD or anxiety. I don't think it was really a cumulative effect of a bunch of different traumas over the years. I think that's common with law enforcement officers. I kind of reached my tipping point late in 2018. And just got to the point where I was so anxious I didn't want to go out to restaurants or go into shopping centers or even travel, really. And I just kind of knew for me that I had to get serious about addressing that.
Thanks for sharing that with us. So on other episodes of our podcast, we've talked about rapid reset strategies. Which rapid reset or in-the-moment strategies do you use?
Something that was given to me by my therapist was an exercise where you kind of tense your body from your toes all the way up to your head and then release as you go along, and it kind of relaxes your body. Meditation is also something that's big that I use. I meditate every night.
Those are some great strategies. Is there anything else that you do to manage your stress?
Well, I can tell you the top 3 things that are in my toolkit right now, which is exercise at the gym, whatever you enjoy doing at the gym, as long as you're active. It's a huge stress reliever. And that could be from taking a walk around your neighborhood to actually going to the gym and lifting weights or doing whatever. I also do yoga fairly often, which is good for us in law enforcement for a lot of reasons. We develop all kinds of back and joint issues from the stresses on our body during the job, as well as internalizing stress and traumatic experiences. All that affects your body. So doing yoga causes you to breathe and to relax, and it stretches you out. So that's kind of a no-brainer on why it would work. And as far as yoga, I don't go anywhere. It's not anything formal. There are YouTube videos out there galore of basic to advanced yoga routines. And meditation has been huge for me. And I went into it with a really conservative mindset, thinking that it was just like I was going to be laying crystals on my body or something like that. But meditation has been really, really useful for me. And I found that it's being used by the Marine Corps and several other like large entities in the U.S. And meditating is simple. All you have to do is find you a quiet place, walk into a wood line if that's where you want to be, sit in your car, sit in your chair in your office, lay down at home. And I use guided meditations through it.
And so, yeah, there's plenty more where that came from, but just wanted to give you a little bit of a feel for the types of things that they were able to talk about with law enforcement, and just like To the point earlier about how the community really wanted to see peers, basically talking to each other about this stuff, I think it's a really cool example of law enforcement officers sharing with each other what works for them and how trauma is showing up in their community. So just super excited about it, and just want to really encourage y'all to share this with anyone. So this is like out into the wide world of the internet. So if you can think of people in your life that this would be helpful to listen to, or even just might be interested, like please share these links. We'll email them out with anybody so people kind of see the types of things that our community is talking about. I don't think there are a lot of sheriff's offices or law enforcement communities around the country having these conversations. So just super excited to be a leader on that. And so just kind of last thing to share here, wanted to give y'all an opportunity. If you have any specific questions or comments for the students, just encourage you to put that into the chat for Juliet to potentially respond to, or anybody else. Cool. Great. So yeah, coming up on the end here, but like we said, there's an optional practice group after, but just some closing stuff. We will be having a next meeting. So excited to just continue to gather. Currently this meeting is scheduled for July 21st, same kind of lunch hour, in person at Down East. Of course, like if that is not a realistic thing, we'll just do this Zoom thing again. It seemed to work. I think we got like 70 people on this call, so really appreciate the engagement and flexibility. So we'll keep you posted on that, but hold the time and date because hoping to meet again. And then a couple of closeout reminders. So as usual, we have a survey. Normally we hand it to you in person and say like, do it right now, but we cannot do that. So we'll be sharing the link. Seth's putting it in the chat right now, and we'll also email it out. Would really appreciate your feedback on how this went, especially because it's the first time we're doing it virtual and maybe not the last. So want to do better. And then there's a couple of questions at the end on the survey about your feedback on like future training, dates that are good, things like that. So assuming that we are able to offer Reconnect for Resilience training later this year, potentially maybe in the spring or fall, just want your input now on which dates are good, because as you can imagine, it is going to be a scheduling challenge later to figure this out. So the earlier we can get dates, the better. And so before we hop out, just want to close with gratitude, and specifically just the idea, similar to resources and other tools, centering on gratitude can be something that can reset our nervous system and just help us feel present and connected. So invite everyone to just kind of, before you hop off, share in the chat something that you are grateful for right now. It can be really hard, or it can be really easy in hard times to get fixated on bad stuff. And like, this is going wrong, this is going wrong, this is hopeless. And so want to center towards like what's something we're all grateful for in the moment. And so if you would type that in, and then for those of you who are interested in staying on for the practice group, don't log off, just stay on and we'll start it in a couple minutes. For those of you who are not, feel free to hop off after you share your gratitude. Super, super appreciate your willingness to try this and engaging with us and being a community that I think is modeling what connection and resilience looks like in a really hard time. And just because this video chat meeting is ending doesn't mean the engagement is over. So please continue to reach out if you have ideas or different things that you would like us to host or figure out how to continue to provide support. Yeah, you guys are awesome. Really appreciate it. So excited to read your gratitude. And then if you're doing the practice group, stay on. And if not, have a great rest of the day and week. Appreciate you.